sector review is going to go. Excuse me. Sector review is going to go on YouTube. The This session is going to just be posted inside of the group. All right. So we actually do have a pretty sizable list to go through. Give me a second. I just got to go back into. Actually, before we jump into that, let's talk about what's happening tomorrow. Not tomorrow, next week. Okay. As far as earnings, and then also as far as what's coming up for Monday, Tuesday. Actually, nothing's going on Monday week wise, as far as weekly events, right? Now, I'm sure you're aware of what's going on war wise, right? So pay attention to the defensive stocks. That would be LMT, NOC, and Raytheon. Those are the three major ones. Um, so obviously with things ramping up and war coming up, well, the roar ramping up, then obviously those tickers are probably going to go. All right. Obviously I'm not hoping for that. I'm very amoral when it comes to stocks. I just take news as is. All right. So please don't think, oh my God, Tensho's cold and he's praying for war. That's not the case at all. Core PPI on Tuesday, the 13th. That will be at 8:30 in the morning, right? And then on the following Wednesday, we will have core CPI, right? Obviously, two very big events that can sway the market. So I'm saying that to say anything that we go over today, make sure that you don't get so stuck to your bias that you don't know what to do for the rest of the week. All right. You could have a bullish bias on something, but because of core CPI and core PPI, that can entirely change. So, whatever it is that you're looking at, make sure that you have a plan to the other side. I'm going to go ahead and try to give that to you for the tickers that we're going to look at. And if we have some time a little bit later on, we will look at whatever tickers you guys want to look at as well, too. All right. Thursday, job numbers, right? So obviously last Thursday, what was the catalyst? I put that in quotation marks. Um, Thursday job numbers was a catalyst for this drop. Personally, I think it's just, manipulation, but whatever. We got initial jobless claim at 8:30 in the morning. Then we have retail sales as well, too. So for those of you thinking about jumping into any ticker that's in the retail sector, please pay attention to that as well, too. And then on Friday, do we have anything going on Friday? Home builder confidence, housing, building permits, consumer sentiment at 10 a.m. So yeah. But obviously the bigger things are going to be Tuesday and Wednesday, PPI, and then also CPI. Far as earnings goes, we have gold tomorrow morning, Home Depot Tuesday morning, Cisco Wednesday after market close, Thursday. We have Walmart, JD, Baba, and John Deere, DE, for Thursday morning. That same Thursday after market close, we have AMAT as well too. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into some tickers. If there are any tickers that you want to look at, please go ahead and put them in the chat. I will try to get to them, but like I said, we have a pretty well, not too long, but it's a pretty decent enough list that I'm gonna be starting from the weekly sector, excuse me, the weekly time frame. We may glance at the monthly, but we're really gonna be looking more at the weekly, just in the interest of um time. If you are on the sector review, the theme of the weekly is a lot of two down bull candles, right? The buyers stepped up, a lot of liquidity sweeps, bulls came in. Now that could be one of two things. Either A, this is the beginning of a bullish run, or B, this is the beginning of manipulation. We'll hit some sort of resistance and then we will reject and continue heading to the downside. Remember, stocks don't go straight up, they don't go straight down, right? So obviously you're gonna have ups and downs along the way. First thing that I wanted to go ahead and take a look at is going to be Delta. Okay. Delta purely because we have hit OTE levels on the weekly for Delta. If you draw your fibs from this swing low all the way up to the swing high up in the bearish breaker block where we rejected, you can see we fell back literally into OTE levels. And as you can see, we're still at a pretty good area at discount for us to potentially, continue pushing higher. Just wanted to illustrate that. I'm going to go ahead and remove that now. So what would need to happen is obviously a reversal to the upside if we're thinking bullish, but then also you got to mark out some areas of where you think you might find a little resistance. 42.17 would be one of them. So if you want to, based on the weekly alone, if you wanted to, like if it triggers the week up, or we'll look at the daily, I would probably look at the 40 call just in case if we get to 42.17 and we get a little rejection and continue heading south. So one or two things could happen because obviously there's a fair value gap here as well too. We can hit into this previous low and then reject and continue heading south, taking out either this external, that or external, or all the way down to this liquidity down here. I know there's a fair value gap here, which is internal range liquidity, but honestly, it's so small that I think price might just skip it over and head down there if we're going to continue heading south. If we're going to be bullish, ideally what we would look for is if you take that 40 call, you want price to displace above this previous low right here. If it does that, cool, right? And then it can continue pushing up. Now, if you miss that first move, that's fine. More than likely it's going to come back and retrace and then continue heading up. Probably going to come back and attack this unicorn model up here, which would be, again, a breaker block with a fair value gap inside of it. Looking at the daily, on Friday, we kind of ended sort of hammerish, but it is still bearish. The reason why I think that we might still have a chance to continue pushing up is because we created a very small fair value gap, but we also created a nice little order block here as well too. This is a bullish order block, right? For those that don't know, what makes it an order block is we get displacement on the second candle. In other words, the candle closed above this one. So the thought process on that is during this drop here, there's a lot of buy orders that are being put in place, and obviously they get executed on the following candle, hence the displacement above it. So far, what we've done is close the gap on the daily. We do have another small gap as well too that would need to be closed. So again, that's why I'm thinking based on the weekly, the fact that we are at OTE entry, and then also on the daily, there is a good chance that we can be in at the OTE entry on the daily, also with this fair value gap and order block to the bullish side. There's a good chance we can get some bullish momentum back to the upside. Again, because of where we might find resistance on the weekly at 42.17, I would say keep it tight to the 40 call or the 41 call. Obviously, go at least 2 weeks to a month out. I haven't looked at open interest or volume or anything like that, so please do your proper research. I'm putting this out there because it is small account friendly, so I know like a lot of y'all may not be able to afford the heavier tickers, but this one is small account friendly. And just so you know, it's not going to move like $5 a day and be highly volatile. However, that's decent movement for a small account ticker. $1.50 a day is actually pretty decent. Okay. So I would say Delta, if we trigger to the upside, Delta 40 call or 41 call, or even 42, right? Because this ideally is where I'd want you to target the 42.17. Hold on just one second. Sorry about that. Okay, so 42.17. Obviously, I'm not gonna lie, there is obviously a lot to get through here, right? You have some fair value gaps, also this fair value gap that broke structure as well, too. But again, based on the fact that it's at OTE levels, um, I honestly would even look for, just give it a little bit more time than August 16th. Um, hell, I might even look at September's, and I know you're looking at something close to the strike. But again, being the fact that it's at OTE level is kind of appealing to me. Okay. That's Delta. We're gonna move. Let me check my list. Give me one second. Uh, Okay, so we're going to switch over to XLP. We're going to come over to Coca-Cola. So again, if you were looking at the sector video, you should know why we're looking at XLP sector, excuse me, why we're looking at XLP tickers. Um, for Coca-Cola, it is relatively a slow mover, but I did want to start off by talking about the monthly. As you can see, we've taken the month up, and yes, we are currently at all-time highs, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat that and be like, hey, you know, like we got room to keep going. So technically, the only targets that I would look at is probably the high of the current month right now, maybe the 70 call. But looking at the weekly, we went inside week. So if there is a reversal, right? So I'm giving it to you both sides. If there is a reversal, ideally I would probably target the low of probably the 65 put, not the low of this week, this low here. And again, I'm talking about giving it some time. If we do drop, I think the weekly, excuse me, the weekly bullish breaker block will probably be used as support, if not one of these fair value gaps, right? Because what are we looking for? Price to move from external range liquidity to internal range liquidity. And I think with the way XLP is looking, I think we're going to find some support and possibly get a bounce. So if we're looking to the downside, I'd probably look at the 65 put, giving it some time. However, this inside week could also be just profit taking, right? As you can see, Coca-Cola's been on a pretty decent run. First leg consolidation, followed by the second leg to the upside. So probably those who got in down here or in the 50s are probably taking their profit somewhere around here. If we do go to the upside, again, I'm probably looking at the 70, probably maybe the 72s. 72.5, I think, is how their contracts go. 75, I think, might be stretching it a little bit. But based off of the weekly, the inside actionable signal, we also have a double inside. And the reason why I'm probably leaning more bullish than anything else, two reasons. One, XLP is considered, I don't want to call it a recession proof, but it's recession resistant, right? If you really think about it logically, people are still going to drink Coke, people are still going to buy chocolate in Hershey, people are still going to clean their houses, Clorox, people are still going to buy from Walmart, people are still going to buy from Costco. So even with the worries of the recession and you know the war going on and all this stuff, people still have to buy those things. Hence the reason why it's called the consumer staples um, sector, right? It doesn't matter what environment, what economic environment we're in, you still got to go do those things, right? These are necessities, right? So we're double inside on the daily. Also, if you pay attention to how the last five candles, right? Clearly, we seem to find some support around these levels here, around 68, right? So even if we do get a drop, um, honestly, it really would be this high that I would be targeting for support. But you know, I wouldn't expect right now for price to really drop back to that unless we have something um, I guess bad, or if you know if again the manipulation wants to kick in. But um you know, you got an order block here with this inside candle, nice little skinny fair value gap, so a little bit of bullish support there, plus this previous high as well too, that's clearly holding support. You got the double inside, so again, if we break to the upside, usually we get a pretty explosive move coming out of double insides. um, and yeah, probably would be targeting again either the 70 call or really honestly the 70 call. If you want to get something close to the money like the 69 call, then you know, so be it. Um, but yeah, for Coca-Cola, I would definitely be looking at that 70 call. Give it some time, and if it goes, then great, even better. If it goes up to like 72 or possibly 75, depending on how much time you've given on the contract, even better. So far, though, XLP sector does not look like it's slowing down. So yeah, I would expect this to continue pushing up. Clearly, after we made the highs and even with the drop, it just basically consolidated. So I don't think the bulls are necessarily done with XLP just yet. One second. Okay. So that was KO. Now, if it does drop to the downside, um, I would probably feel more comfortable taking this first inside candle as my entry, not necessarily this inside candle, because I feel like even if that does trigger, if you're looking at all of the candles and where we've been wicking, this high is still being respected. So if it triggers this candle, but then you could get chopped up, it might still stay in this range for the put side. So I would probably want to see 67.85 get broken to the downside, in which case, again, I would be targeting the 65 put. And again, marking out this as my daily target. So if it hits this, getting the 65 put, okay, cool. I would probably take profit at that point because you're coming right into, again, a breaker block with the fair value gap inside of it. So that's a unicorn model. I know it's pretty skinny, but still, it's a unicorn model. You also have a previous high there as well, too, that could be used potentially as support. All right, just checking to see if there was any questions. All right, so that's KO. So again, 65 put or 70 call. Both of them I would recommend at least giving 2 weeks out. Coca-Cola moves $1 a day, so it's not necessarily again one of your highly volatile ones. But if any of you traded Palantir over these past couple of weeks, I think what I had earnings not last week but the week before. It's a small account ticker, but it does very good damage, right? So just throwing that out there. 1 second. Okay. All right. So that's KO. Let me go back to my list. So what do we do? Raytheon. So I know a lot of y'all been on LMT. I believe that one's relatively more expensive than Raytheon. So I picked Raytheon for that reason, just to like if you can't afford LMT, because I think like sometimes, depending on which strike you're choosing, you might be looking at like 1,000 a con, if I'm not mistaken. But Raytheon, just based off of the chart, not necessarily paying too much to the news, but obviously the news would be a good catalyst, right? So far, what have we done? We've created a actually, let me check out the monthly real quick. So monthly is a 2 up bearish hammer. So we could probably flip that green soon enough. But looking at the weekly, currently inside candle, right? Holding support above this fair value gap, this bullish fair value gap that broke structure. So if we do get a drop, I would probably, my bad, I'll probably look for price to probably hold support around these previous highs over here, right? So if you're gonna, think puts, this probably be the area that I'd probably tell you to look at. Probably the 110 puts if you're thinking to the downside just based off the weekly. Yeah. Um, but if you're thinking to the upside for the 212 continuation to the upside, we'll look at the daily and try to find some targets. But actionable signal on the week, on the daily, again, you can see that support on the fair value gap, the weekly fair value gap being held. Actually, let me just draw it out so I can illustrate. So then boom. So again, right, on the daily, obviously a gap up, right? Earnings, of course, right? Then there's your pullback, but the gap one is still being respected, and so is the fair value gap being respected as well too. As you can see, we didn't sweep this initial low that we just made. So strat wise, we're looking at a potential TTO to the upside. So if you do get a 2 up continuation, I probably would be targeting the 120 calls. Now, this thing does move $2 a day, so you can probably get away with either doing weeklies. But again, if you want to give yourself some more time, I would probably look at the following week. But if I'm not mistaken, I think we might be at all-time highs. Let me see. Yep, we are at all-time highs. So just be careful with exhaustion risk. However, so long as they're continuing talking about the news of what's going on over there in the Middle East, yeah, I would expect the 2-2 continuation on strat wise. Um, and yeah, TTO to the upside, that 118.30 to be taken out. And if you go multiple cons, if it hits that 118, gets above our price, start reducing my position at that point and then go from there. Also, you do have an ex-dividend date coming up for Friday the 16th. Now, it's not always a guarantee, but just so you know, this will be the last day for dividend investors to purchase the stock in order to get the next payment date of dividends, the next payout of dividends on September 5th. So that might add a little bit to the boost of some bullish behavior. Not always a guarantee, but it might add a little bit to the bullish behavior for Raytheon. All right. So again, RTX 120 call to the upside. If you're thinking puts again, just based on what I'm seeing with the weekly, it's gonna be tough. You're gonna be going against the trend, but if anything, I would say look at the 110 puts. If the weekly, not the daily, if the weekly triggers to the downside, then that's where I would take puts, right? But if this with this two up, if it triggers to the downside, considering that this low and then also this low was respected, um, yeah, I would at least want the weekly fair value gap to be invalidated a little bit, or at least come down to the consequent encroachment. Um, yeah, I'm just not seeing like bearishness, but I want to give you both sides of it, to be honest with you. Now, for shits and giggles, if it does trigger to the downside, but you're still like sold on bullishness, right? Because again, we just made highs, so we very well could have a potential drop, right? We did make a lower high. From a swing standpoint, the game plan for me would be this: let it trigger the lows. Don't take that put to the downside, right? The consequent encroachment of this fair value, this weekly fair value gap, just also happens to be the beginning of this daily gap fill, right? This will in most cases with a lot of back testing, in most cases, the first time a gap is entered, usually it gets rejected and then it kind of bounces before heading back into it, right? You also have a daily bullish breaker block there as well too. So if anything, if it comes back down to the 110 level for Raytheon, in my opinion, that probably, especially if you see exhaustion around the consequent encroachment and then ultimately displacement above the consequent encroachment, in my opinion, I think that sets us up for some pretty decent longs. You may want to look a month out and look at Raytheon. Um, the 120 calls just going a month out. All right. So just giving you that idea as well too. All right, let me go back to my list. Raytheon. 1 second. Okay. So coming back there, Apple. Let's take a look at Apple. Let's flip back to the weekly here, and then let's take a look at Apple real quick. So my reasonings for looking at Apple, I think, hold on, let me just check because I didn't put it down in my notes, but let me just check just to make sure. So go here. Yeah, okay. So couple different reasons, right? Apple dipped down below discount initially, right into this breaker block, right? Obviously, you can see the fair value gap over here that was still respected as well too, and then completely bounced outside of it. So now Apple is set up for a potential 122 rev strat on the weekly, right? Excuse me. So with that being said, let's take a look at the daily. So looking at the daily, still got a little bit of ways to go to close this gap fill. which would take us, let's see, there to there. So that would take us to 217.71. Now, if we can displace above the gap fill, and the reason why I think we can is because we have closed above 50% of that gap fill so far, right? We also have, let me get rid of this real quick. We also have this previous low here as well too that I'm looking for price to displace above. Um, if we can get that displacement above, then yeah, price just now came out of the fair value gap, also filled the gap fill. So again, price is moving from internal range liquidity to external range liquidity, in which case this would be the next target up here, 225 for Apple. Now, on the flip side, this for this previous low here, or inflection point, if you will, for those of you that watch Casper, you know what I'm talking about. Wrong one. Let's click here. Um, this inflection point of 217, right, could also act as resistance. So if you see that price gets above, but then ultimately, so basically if it does something like this, but ultimately displaces below this inflection point, um, yeah, then in that case, it's puts that I would probably start looking at. You can wait until it triggers puts strat wise. You can wait until it triggers puts to the downside. Daily entry. If you wanted to, the 211.97, in which case my target would be external range liquidity, which would be down here at 190. So basically the 200 put. And again, you want to give that some time as well too. Now, if it does displace above, again, I mean, if you want to take the daily trigger is literally right at that inflection point, basically, right? So I would probably say use that inflection point, the 217.02, as the actual trigger. If it triggers above that and again holds above it, at which point again I would say I would probably tell you to look at either the 220 calls or the if you want to get some more time, the 225. But again, based on what's coming up this week as far as economic events, probably wouldn't want to go too far off the money. I would probably say 220 would probably be the safer bet. I know it's probably going to be a little bit more expensive, but yeah. You also do have ex-dividend date, the 12th, which, well, tomorrow, so never mind. Which means that you may actually get a drop off afterwards as well, too. Just be careful, right? Pay attention to both sides that I was talking about. If you're going to go calls, it triggers, make sure that it displaces and holds above, in which case 220 call. If you start to see it kind of exhaust and then ends up kind of like anywhere resembling a shooter, I would probably say again, take that. You can either wait till the following day, take that entry to the downside, and either if you want to play it close to the money, you can look at the 210 puts, or I would say 210 puts, 205 or 200s, depending on how much time you want to give it. All right, for Apple. But based on how we bounced out of the breaker block here, also same breaker block that, well, not same, but also a breaker block was created on the daily as well too. I like the chances. I like the chances. I know it's going to be heavily dependent on what happens this week, but I like the chances. Okay. Okay. So no questions so far. Let me go back to the list. All right. Back to the list. So we got, all right. So we're going to flip over, come back to the weekly here. We're going to flip over to Tesla real quick. All right. So Tesla, I really should have wrote my notes down, but I believe, yeah. Okay. So Tesla actually did start off in OTE entry territory, right? It's still at discount. I mean, obviously, I know it kind of touched discount equilibrium, I should say, but it's still at discount. So I think Tesla might be setting up for some to take a little something, right? Do a little something strange for a piece of change. So pay attention to Tesla. Keep that on your radars for sure. So it's currently at 200. Obviously, what we get is the nice little consolidation. We get the run up, we get the pullback. So we'll see if we can, get that potential bounce back to the upside based on the weekly. Now, looking at the daily, um, daily doesn't look as pretty. We did go 3-1-2 up, but we're still stuck in this mother bar, right? So if we do trigger to the upside, the 200, just be careful at what happens once we get to the high of this mother bar at 203. So again, I'll probably keep it close to the money, um, probably at the 205 call if it does trigger to the upside. Now, you do have a gap fill here, right, to get through for the upside. And if we can push through all of that, I think your next level of resistance is going to be up at the 220 range. So if we push through all of that and you go 205 and hold through that, that's absolutely fine. If you do want to go further out, I would suggest the 210s, but again, be acutely aware of what happens to price once we get above or touch the high of this mother bar, right? Because again, we can get rejection. Again, fair value gap here, we can hit the consequent encroachment of the fair value gap, reject, and then start falling back down. Um, but again, I like the fact that Tesla was at OTE entry, started pushing its way up. Hell, if it falls back to OTE entry, I wouldn't be mad at that as well either. Now, for the put side, if it triggers puts, again, I would say just be acutely aware of what happens at the low of this mother bar at 191. Because again, it may come down, exhaust, and then like just again, the body may just stay inside of this range. Um, so again, just be acutely aware of what happens. Now, if we do lose 191.48, then probably target an external range liquidity at 182. So if we do lose 190, if it does trigger to the downside, you can probably look at getting the 190 puts. And then if it falls all the way down to 182, it's a fat ass bag right there. All right. Now for the call side, again, if it triggers above 200, we can take out 203. If it gets all the way up to 2010, excuse me, 210, hell, even 220, fat ass bag either way. This one is a faster mover, highly volatile. So theta is going to kill your contracts. I'm saying that because if you get weeklies and price stays inside of this mother bar, you're probably going to lose money. All right. This is the reason why I say the mother bar is just that important. Price might just sit and range inside of this mother bar for days at a time. All right. So again, if you're going calls and you notice that we can't get displacement above the high of the three, just get out. Just get out. Right. You can always get another entry at a later time. If it comes down, and again, couldn't displace below the lows as well too. Again, just get out the puts. You can always get another entry at a given time. I don't want you to get chopped up in this mother bar. All right. However, the fact that it's at OTE range, I like it. It's still at discount, so it should still be appealing to buyers. All right. It will still be at discount, should be still appealing to buyers. Okay. 1 second. Meta is going to be next, but 1 second. All right, we're gonna go to Meta. All right, so Meta, as you can see on the weekly, right, still respected that broad information that it created a couple of weeks ago on the weekly, respected the bottom of it. And then we also have the highs right here as well, too, right? So um, if Meta is going to continue its behavior of heading back, the behavior of the broad information, prices ever expanding, higher highs, lower lows. If it's going to continue that behavior, eventually Meta goes to 542.81 and higher. Okay. Reasons probably why you saw Sal talking about again 530, 540, possibly for next week as well, too. All right. Next week being this week, because he said it last week. So on the weekly, two down bull candle, which sets us up for a 2-2 reversal back to the upside. Clearly, there's levels of support around this previous low here, right? Obviously, you get the same type of exhaustion as well too when it gets swept, right? So clearly, we have a little bit of support there. Looking at the daily, right? We went 212 to the upside. Honestly, the next level for the daily to attack, if we assuming we get 2-2 continuation, is 527.17. Um, Now I have training to do for the next 2 weeks, so I probably won't be able to trade as much or even alert trades. However, I'm probably going to put this on the watch list. And if I get an opportunity, I'm probably going to go for that 530 call. I probably will go out a little bit further. Yes, it'll be a little bit more expensive, but I like Meta setup. I like XLC setup as well too. So yeah, these would be your targets to the upside, 527.17, and then also that next target up there at 538.88. Let me pause. Okay, no questions. Um, so yeah, your entry would be that above the high of this two up, so 518.34. Anything above 518.34. Meta's a fast mover, it moves almost $20 a day, right? So very good chance that hell, even tomorrow, it might get to 530 and above. All right, just throwing that out there. If we were to, I mean, honestly, like my conviction is kind of strong in Meta, but if we were to go to the put side, 505 would be your trigger, 505.70. I would probably target this fair value gap that got created. Oh, my bad. Hold on, let me just stretch it out. I would probably target the fair value gap that got created. If it triggers 505, I'll probably look at like either the 490 put or possibly the 485 put. You would have some targets along the way to the downside, 494.72, and then again the beginning of the fair value gap, which would be 486.86. All right. But again, looking at full time frame continuity, the majority is bullish. I think the month, yeah, very quick, very easily to flip the month green. It's currently inside, but very easily can be flipped green as well too. So based on the broad information, based on the weekly, the two down bull candle, I mean, honestly, that's a lot of buying pressure. So you might get, some sort of a little bit of profit taking, so profit taking pullback. Um, but yeah, for me, I'm really seeing bullishness on this, to be honest with you. So again, 530. If you get more time, 535, 540 is probably what I'd be looking at for Meta to the call side. And then for the put side, um, if you want to keep it close to the money, the 500, 495, 490, and 485 is where I'd probably be looking, depending on how much time you're giving it. Okay. Adobe. Check out Adobe on the weekly. Come back there. Okay. Um, for Adobe, let's see, are we at? Gotta do the check. So Adobe dipped down to right below equilibrium, but as you can see, it dipped into the fair value gap and completely bounced off of it on the weekly. That sets us up for a 322 rev strat back to the upside. I believe so the monthly the monthly dipped into the a monthly fair value gap, but obviously held support, right? I imagine it's because of the order block here and also the fair value gap. So obviously there's some, buying pressure there. The month is still red, of course, right? But we still have 3 more weeks left in August. So with Adobe and how fast it can move, it would not be surprising um, for 550 to come right around the corner, right? That's literally $14 away if my math is correct. So it would be nothing but ease for Adobe to flip the monthly back to green, right? So just keep that 549.99, basically 550 in mind, right? Especially if we get that 322 rev strat. If that is the case, I imagine price is going, at least on the weekly, if you're looking to go long term, price is probably going to go ahead and attack buy side liquidity up at 580. So you might even be able to get away with looking at 585, 590, or hell, even the 600 call for Adobe. Looking at the daily, we did get a displacement above this previous low, right? So expecting that 2-2 continuation. There's also, it's just beginning to attack this gap fill. So if it doesn't reject out of that, because it's a highly volatile ticker, so it can probably close that in one day. If that is the case, again, 549.99 would probably be the next for me target that I'm looking at for to see if the month flip green. And then afterwards, you have buy side liquidity up here at 560. So if you're trying to do like just weeklies or even something 2 weeks out, I'd probably look honestly at either the 550 call or the 560 call for Adobe. Let me change that to buy side liquidity for Adobe, right? If you're trying to go a little bit further out, like maybe a month out, I'll probably start looking at the anywhere between 580 to 600. Um, but even looking at the daily, this looks like the beginning of a potential TTO back to the upside, which again, taking out buy side liquidity up here at 580 would be the completion of that very long-term TTO. Now, if we're talking to the put side, um, honestly, that would be your entry at 528.02. Uh, could fall. Actually, that's more of an inversion fair value gap scenario. Yeah, because if that's the case, if it falls back down here, then to me that's an inversion fair value gap scenario, and then we can end up looking at going long. I know I said have a plan for both ways, but I wouldn't want to play puts on this, even if it does trigger to the downside. I would probably wait if it does trigger to the downside, wait to see if it comes all the way back down to 500, because you have a fair value gap, right? Especially if it sweeps liquidity and doesn't run it, you got a fair value gap, and there's a bullish breaker block here as well too. So I think there's a lot of support down at this level for Adobe. So if anything, I'll probably take that as an opportunity to go long on Adobe, just keeping it a stack. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It is what it is. All right. So next cost, because I know y'all into that right now as well too. Some of y'all missed the first initial run. Um, But yeah, based off of XLP, um, honestly, I'm expecting cost to go 3-2 to the upside. It's probably going to target the highs up here at 896. So you could probably even look at the 900 call with time for cost. Looks like it's the beginning of a TTO back to the upside. I don't know the cost of, not no pun intended, the cost 900 call contract, but it is a fast mover. 900 calls probably, would probably say like just to give it time. You know, I love giving time, so I'd say a month out. Um, $16 a day. I think giving it 2 weeks might be stretching it. So yeah, I would say go a month out. But that technically would be your next weekly target there, right? Looking at the daily, looks like we are trying to displace out and above this bearish breaker block. Um, I want to see it clear these highs though, right? It touched, but it couldn't really do much with it. Obviously because of the big run up. So I would love to see displacement above those highs, and in which case your next target on the daily is going to be up here at 890. So again, um, if you want to get somewhere in between, I would probably say like do the fibs, the 50% of this rather large candle. So probably look at maybe the 870 call. You can do that as a weekly. Again, I love giving time, so I'll probably say go at least 2 weeks out for the 870 call. But if you're given time, like yeah, I mean the 890 is it's within reach in my opinion, especially with if XLP continues pushing like it's been doing. It's within reach. So, and just looking at costs, it looks like the party's
I
just
think um I think Netflix is something to keep an eye on this week as well too.
Netflix is actually a part of my list. Yep. That's actually next after snow, but yeah, we definitely can. So, from the sector review, like those, like I'm picking out tickers from the like XLP I liked, XLC I liked, as well too. So yeah, Netflix is definitely one of them that we're going to talk about next. So yeah, that's cost. Let me flip over to snow real quick. All right. So snow, excuse me. Snow I picked out because of the fact that it's coming back from sweeping the lows over here. So and we went inside candle and then we got displacement above the previous low. Now, I picked it for two reasons. One, because it's inside, so inside can go both ways, right? Either to the upside or to the downside. Obviously, major breaker block above. I'm not, gonna be like, oh, well, I don't see that. Um, Looking at the weekly though, right? It seems right? We got over the gap fill here. We're pushing through. Uh, we pushed through the first fair value gap. Ideally, what I would like to see is price to get to this level, the 126. So if we do trigger to the upside, I'll probably say look at the 125 calls. You might find some resistance around this previous low, this 126.68. If we clear that, then your next target is going to be up here, right? But because we swept lows, for snow, it's been, getting this ass kicked for a little bit. I know like the market's not done with it. So I know that, they're basically waiting for a pretty good area for discount. So, 125 call, possibly 130s, for snow. Now, if we come up to the daily, again, hit that 126 and then reject, no fair value gaps on the way down. So I would have to target the next liquidity, which would be all the way down at 107. If that happens, you need to go with time. You need to give it time. I'll probably say even somewhere in September, looking at the 100 put. You do have earnings on August 21st. Um, so if you want to wait until to see what happens after that point, then you're more than welcome to. But I think we might be seeing the beginnings of snow coming back, right? I know it had that really horrible drop last earning report, but we may see the beginnings of snow coming back. All right, flipping over to Netflix. So XLC again is one of the sectors that I really like this week. We are, if I've been studying correctly, we actually have an inversion fair value gap scenario,
So
right?
the only thing about Snow do a lot of fucking around, and I think for now it's just something to watch more or less.
And that's
You
fine.
know,
Like, if people want to watch it, that's absolutely. I mean, because there's definitely a lot of other tickers with a stronger conviction in it, right? And that's absolutely fine if people just want to watch it for right now, wait until after earnings, which again, nothing wrong with that. Good for being patient with that. Or hell, you may even have the opportunity to get the 125s on the weekly and just get in, get out, and be done with it. Right. So just trying to, give as many versatile options as possible, depending on what your trading style is. For Netflix on the so we bounced out of the fair value gap, right? I think, let me see something real quick. I think that was below discount. Let me change this real quick to OTE. So yeah, so it basically bounced from the OTE entry and then ran all the way. God damn, that was a pretty good ass week. Damn, man, I gotta find like there are no scanners for OTE, right? Like I get like it one that shows, but like in Thinkorswim, there's no like, hey, this is at OTE levels. Like shit, that was a bag and a half right there. But the party could just be starting, right? So um on the weekly we got the two down bull candle, right? So that sets us up for a 2-2 reversal back to the upside. Again, might find a little bit of resistance up here, previous high and previous low. So inflection point, you might find some resistance around 662. But if you look at maybe based on the weekly 650 calls, I don't think that would be a bad way to go. Looking at the daily, um, we just looking for a little bit of displacement outside of this breaker block, but um, yeah, again, like I said, it looks like the party's just getting started. Major, um, all major time frames with the exception of the quarter. And I want to see how fast could we. Nope, it's not flipping anytime soon. But um, daily, weekly, and monthly are bullish, right? So you'll be going with majority full time frame continuity in your favor. Trigger entry, I would say, would be 636.62. Based on the weekly, you could look at the 650, but if you're looking at the daily, your targets would, well, yeah, 650, because that, or 645 if you want. But yeah, that's going to be your first daily target. Second daily target is going to be, yeah. So again, I'd probably choose something in between target 1 and 2, which would be the 650 call. Now Netflix is a mover, so could it hit 650 this week? Yep. I like time, so I'd probably say go at least 2 weeks out. But you could get away with um 650 this week. I just again, because of what's happening economically speaking, the economic events, I'm not really comfortable with getting any weeklies. Um, yeah, I'm just not comfortable with it. But again, it's your money. You can do whatever the hell you want to do. I am so bullish on XLC. Honestly, I don't really see this one dropping. However, this would be your entry, 622.99 to the put side. Again, price moves from internal to external. So if it triggers to the downside, your next internal range liquidity is going to be uh, inversion. So your next internal range liquidity is going to be here, this fair value gap on the daily, which is where I would tell you to target. But honestly, because of the inversion fair value gap setup, on the weekly, this may actually just be used as support. So if anything, this may actually give you a better opportunity for calls. If it falls down to, let's say, the 610 area and you see it starting to exhaust off of that, um, in my opinion, to probably give you a better opportunity for calls, in which case you probably just get a really decent swing with time. And I would still target the 650 strike. Oh, my bad. I didn't see the chats. 890 in 2 weeks is 960. Looks familiar. Why can't I open this? Inversion. Yeah. Nah, I mean, I've been watching and rewatching T Trades, his inversion fair value gap scenario. So um and on Friday night, I just kept back testing it until I fell asleep. I only got it done like 6 times, 5 or 6 times, but um, yeah, I'm trying to. I really love the unicorn model, so I'm trying to now learn the inversion fair value gap model, and I like it. I'm liking it a lot. So yeah, definitely pay attention to that. And I think yeah, as long as it holds that support, um, again, inversion fair value gap on the weekly, if price comes back down into this, um, yeah, I like it, right? Because what makes an inversion fair value gap, right? Here's your bearish fair value gap. Well, as soon as we get displacement up out of it, that makes it an inverted fair value gap. Price comes back down to retest. And as you can see, held support on this on the previous week. And then the very next week, even though it opened up down here, you see how quickly over the week that the buyers just stepped in and started buying this shit up. So it completely displaced outside of it. Which again, if we get another retest of it, in my opinion, it's not puts. I would say use that as an opportunity to go long. And yeah, 650 calls with time and you know, tag me later if it works out very well, you know. Okay, what else we got? We got last one is Palantir. I didn't really get a chance to look at it, but I wanted to look at it with you guys now. Um holy shit, earnings. Holy earnings, Palantir. And I think there was some news about like a collaboration with Microsoft as well too, and we're definitely not at all-time highs. So we definitely still have some more room to run. As a matter of fact, looks like we're coming to attack this gap fill. Oh shit, my bad. I just realized who put that in there. Muddy, what's up, yo? It's been a long time since I've seen your name pop up, but I see you still trading futures. Good to see that everything's good. Hope everything's good with you and the fam as well too. Okay. So it looks like we're coming to attack this gap fill. So again, we may reject out of it. I mean that this is a major move from earnings, so we may reject out of it and pull back. But I really wouldn't take that as like going bearish. I think it just would be a profit taking pullback, and then so it would probably end up being more of a watch for now, unless it really just wants to run and attack that gap fill, and just continue pushing. So what I would say is it's already at the 30. You may want to look. Oh damn! You know what? I'll put out the targets on in my channel because I'm gonna have to go back in time and see when the next target would be. But um, obviously earnings was good. Um, Markets really liking Palantir, full time frame continuity to your in your favor as well too. Nice little fair value gap created. Fair value gaps tend to create more fair value gaps. Um, it looking strong, man. Palantir's looking strong if you want to keep it like close to the money as a weekly or whatever, because it's not really a super fast mover. But I'd probably say look at maybe the 31 or the 32 call if you're trying to get weeklies this week. Um, but yeah, nah, I like the way Palantir is set up. Um, either again, we go inside on the weekly. I don't think we're gonna, go 3-2 to the downside. So we probably go either inside or probably looking for that 3-2 continuation, right? So that 3-2 continuation, if that does happen, look for displacement above. If it does go kind of shooter-ish, then yeah, you probably will get a nice little pullback, which will probably give an opportunity to go long. And that is it for me, unless we have any questions. Or Sal, if you got any other things you want to look at real quick. Yeah, I think I went through everything. Yeah, I did. Coming back. And if there's no questions, when this is done converting, I'll go ahead and put it again in the Tensho weekly Zoom session. A lot of good plays, but again, I got to I gotta stress, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, honestly, with job numbers. All right. So I gotta stress, if you see profit, bro, this ain't the week to be like, oh, I left money on the table. I should have stayed in longer. Fuck all that. If you see profit, take your goddamn profit. Your point is not to hit home runs. Your point is to grow your portfolio. Compounding grows your portfolio. So please, actually, fuck it. I'm not begging y'all. Take your goddamn profit, right? There should be no reason that you're up 50, 60, 70, 100% only to lose negative 30. All right. So all of that is FOMO and greed. All right. So please just take your shit, take your profit. If you want to try to hit those home runs, get multiple contracts, right? Get multiple contracts, call it a day. All right. Do the simple math of how much you make if you just hit even simply 200 a day. What does that equate to in a week? What does that equate to in a month? And then multiply that shit by 52 weeks. You can't tell me that that doesn't change your life. And this is money that's coming in outside of your mainstream of income. Okay. All right.
Quick question. How
So for
much
those
time
that
you say
follow,
on Netflix?
I'm sorry.
How much time do you say on Netflix for this? You said 650?
So with the 650, it is possible for with Netflix's ATR, it's possible to get it as a weekly. Although again, because of economic events, I wouldn't recommend. But yes, it is possible to do it, and it is possible it can get to 650 by the end of the week. But I would say probably at least go 2 weeks out.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
If you want to go further, like a month or whatever, at that point, you probably should be looking on the weekly and probably be honestly, you should probably be targeting up here. Um, like 680s basically. Because yeah, again, it really obviously depends on what happens this week, but assuming this week is bullish, I could definitely see Netflix over the next month probably attacking this level and probably up here as well too. So basically the 700 call. I'm not telling you to jump into that, but just throwing that out there. All right. Because yeah, earnings is not for a minute now. Yeah. All right. So uh love, peace, and chicken grease. We'll see you guys in the group. And yeah, y'all have a good night. How did I make that go away?